Hello everyone. Today we're here with a third-eyed lion, and he's here today to talk about how he got into tarot, how he got into runes, and generally how he got into doing readings in general. Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
So, hello everyone. Thank you, Violet Ann, for having me here. I love this series, and I'm grateful to be here. Um, my adventure starts in childhood, as similar to yours, and at the youngest possible age, my father was a buyer and seller of collectible cards of all kinds. And in the shed, we would have boxes of any conceivable type of card you can think of. Card games, playing cards, greeting cards. They were all over our shed, and he would buy and sell them. And so when I was a kid, um, around 4 and 5 was the big Pokemania. Pokemon was everywhere, right? And so he he gave me Pokemon cards, and we would play together. My father passed away when I was 7, and around that time, after I really felt a draw to spirit, and so I would take my Pokemon cards and playing cards, and eventually, as an adult, I have them both Pokemon playing cards, and I did not have them as a kid. It's one of those things when you're a kid, you really want something, and then as an adult, it just shows up and someone gives it to you.
Yeah, just ends up finding its way eventually to you.
Yeah, it wasn't someone giving it to me. It was a trade from a deck for a deck, and the idea of playing cards when I was a kid, when I was bored and I'm an only child and I was home by myself, I would take the playing cards, shuffle them up. I would take dice that I could find, laying around the house, and I would just spread them around me in a circle and just face down, flip each one and look at it and just study it for a second, breathe it in, and go to the next one. Not understanding at all that I was giving myself these, you know, emotional understanding readings for as just playing and not even knowing what I was doing. And then over time, my mom would play bunco, which is a dice game that generally women would go to someone's house each week, and there's prizes for losing and winning and all kinds of stuff, and best hat and all kinds of silly prizes. So she would come home with all these prizes, and oftentimes they were bunco sets or just sets of extra dice. It would be playing cards and other things, uh, and decks of playing cards, really nice ones, the expensive bicycle decks that are like the $30 playing cards.
Yeah.
And she would just bring them home uh and give them to me. And sometimes when there was no one to watch me, she would take me to bunco, and one of the women she played with was a professional tarot reader. And one of the prizes my mom won was a free tarot reading for playing bunco. So she went over to this house and she took me, and I tell you, Violet Ann, it's the moment you walk in, it's like knickknacks everywhere. Every conceivable surface, everything is covered with objects. And then even every chair is covered with stuffed objects. And but the whole house is immaculately dusted. Not a speck of dust at all.
It has to
But
move every single thing and dust every single thing.
daily,
Mm-hmm.
daily as part of her magic, or like, because you could tell it's so witchy when you walk in there, and I didn't even know what that was as a kid, but remembering back, and I just sat there, and my mom got this reading, and there was messages for me. I don't fully remember what it was, but they were some ominous and some non-ominous, as my mom recalls. And then that just stuck with me. It just my mind was fascinated with the fact that this person is a professional weird person who gets paid to be weird. And that is just, I didn't know that was an option. I didn't know that was anything. Um and then over time, I would keep playing with. I started adding Yu-Gi-Oh cards and then Magic the Gathering cards, and I would
A little
mix
bit
them
like
together.
when you did the make your own divining deck with the magic cards. So that's how you
Yeah.
kind of started.
And I would just take them, and they're so different. But when as an adult, they're actually not very different because they have the backs all have one spiritual thing in common, a void space of different magic. This is the black void. You have the yin yang void, and then you have the pentagram void. But each one has a magical void space within it as the symbolism of what it is.
Yeah.
And some it's called magic, and it's made by wizards who live on the coast. That's a vert. But this one is literally called pocket monsters in Japan, and it's so funny that the Japanese cards have an English word on the back, and the English cards have a pseudo faux Japanese word on the back. And um and it's just and then you study more, and then you're like, well, the Empress and other tarot archetypes were already in these cards from the very beginning. I was already accessing the Dark Magician is one of the most famous Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but he's a tarot card as well. He's the magician in reverse. So I'm learning the tarot even when I don't know I'm learning the tarot.
So did
And
you kind of actively know you were trying to make a tarot deck after you met that lady, or was it
I
kind
didn't
of
know what
later?
it was. I didn't, but then I the moment it all clicked was I was watching The Wizard of Oz with my aunt. And at the beginning of The Wizard of Oz, before she goes to Kansas, before the storm comes, uh she has Toto, and she meets Professor Marvel in his caravan, and he says he has this crystal ball from the temple of Isis, and he has this big thing, and he's portraying this big psychic character, and he goes all out, and then she leaves, and then he speaks in his country voice, oh, I hope that girl makes it home safe in the storm. And the whole thing was a fake, but it was, to her it was real, but to him it was fake. And it just, I was like 8, and my brain, I had to rewind the VHS tape, so many times, because and then I knew that's who I had to be. That's my path in life. I just clicked. I knew it. And then it's, using a glass of water before you get a crystal ball, and taking a little rock and tying it to a shoelace, making, there's always a way to do divination, but I don't think it was directly tarot, because I didn't know what tarot was. And then I later found out that tarot's in my blood. So when I was a teenager, I find that my dad's sister were both tarot readers. I find out that my mother's grandmother, so my great grandmother, was a tarot reader.
So was it
And
just something that wasn't kind of mentioned then? Was it kind of
no,
hidden?
it was
Which one
never. It
had?
was very religious in some parts of the family, and many people in the family don't agree with the practice of it, just and don't want to understand any aspect of it, just instant vilification, and without any degree of rational thinking.
Yeah, it was just instant shunning sort of thing.
Yeah, and which is, their free will choice to do that, and I respect that, even if they don't respect me and my choices.
Yeah.
And but I found a lot of it in my family, and when
I think when I was talking to some of the others, that unfortunately it just kind of happens a lot, especially in the US, of people just getting scared and shunning it completely without actually any kind of looking into what it means or anything like that sort of thing.
yeah, and so I kind of just took it isolated for years. So instead of like tarot, which I didn't think I was learning the tarot, Violet Ann, but I was learning the tarot the entire time. So I would
You
take,
didn't really know that you were basically trying to make your own tarot deck, but it was there in the background.
but not trying to. I was
Yeah.
just wanting to make something my own, and I realized what it was later on. So this is a deck of playing cards from the Twin Arrows Navajo Casino. but there was other Native American casinos my mom would go to, and they would generally give people these decks with dates and a bunch of information because they have so many decks. They would just give them away to the people at the casino.
Yeah.
And so my mom had a whole bunch of these, so I would just draw things on them with Sharpie. This is a more modern one with intention, but back then there was really no intention, and I would just draw things. But I would study. Some of the times I just wouldn't draw anything on them, and I would just try to understand how each card made me feel emotionally, based on color, based on anything. And so what I have no clue what and then I'm in high school and college, so I'm doing it, but I'm writing down what I think each one feels and means to me, and it's less theoretical, it's more written and more understood as practice. And then I I'm playing Magic a lot in tournaments, and I'm trying to become a professional Magic the Gathering player in my early 20s. So I'm living in San Jose, California, a place with a lot of opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm playing every Friday night, and so I loved the Wizard of Oz books since I saw the movie as a kid, and I read all the books. I have them behind me now, and um, and I was fascinated by them. All 14 of these books in the whole world that was created,
Was it the
and
whole escape into another realm thing, or?
and always being able to come back at the end, yeah.
Yeah.
And but also the grim fantasy, like the really body horror and just disturbing children's fantasy tropes of the early turn of the century. It was fascinating to me. And so um I went to play, and I wasn't the only one fascinated. So the place I would go play Magic was called Elusive Comics. And so this was right when like Kickstarter was first kicking off, and you didn't hear a lot about it, but you heard some about it. And I went in there, and they had for $100 this nice black box, this tarot deck, the Shadows of Oz. And so I was really big into comic books at the time. And so what it said is this tarot deck is made by many famous comic book artists, and each card is based off of a character from the 14 Wizard of Oz books in the tarot.
So like instantly that like checked all the boxes, really.
But I didn't want it. I just wanted it because the art was awesome. I didn't want to do anything else with it. So in the books, this character kills people and takes their heads and is able to swap heads, and each head has a different personality behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really creepy if you think about it. And it's existential in a lot of ways. But it's also very much the Seven of Cups, is the choices, the variance of love, of how you treat yourself and how you treat others. So and I didn't again understand it, so I bought it for $100, and people said that's crazy. Why would you do that? But they just finished Kickstarter, and it's the first run, and I just had it, and I did not use it for over a year and a half. I would just look at it. I would probably say 3 years I had it without ever giving much time and energy to it. And now it's out of print, and in this first edition, the other editions are out, and some of the cards are beat up because of that. I didn't understand it, and the box is long gone, long destroyed. All I have is the guidebook, and the deck is missing one card, and that card was it's the card of the chicken character, Belina, and it was actually card was taken by a chicken. I was showing people to the side, and a chicken literally flew over, and when the cards were on the ground, knocked the deck over and grabbed the chicken card with its talons and like ripped it to shreds.
God, but like how for any card in the deck to get shredded by a chicken, it had to be the chicken card.
With a chicken holding up like a flag in its mouth, celebrating victory of being a chicken. Yeah. And that was the Ace of Swords. So that's very much a chicken thing to do, and it was it and over time I just started learning more, but it was the runes that got me more into divination. So I know my family comes from a Nordic Irish background,
Mhm.
and so I went to the Viking festival in California where I was living, and I was walking through, and there was this guy who had this whole stand of metal. He was like a blacksmith, and he made all kinds of really detailed figurines and pins and all cups and all kinds of things. And but on the side, he had these little hemp bags, and it said runes, and I had no clue, and I was like, "What are these?" And I had never had no knowledge of it whatsoever. And the guy was like, "Well, I made these myself from my backyard. I had a yew tree that was growing over. I cut them up. I did some Viking blessings on them, and it was busy, so I didn't have him explain, you know." And um, and he's like, "Yeah, they're for sale. They're $20." And I didn't have the money at all for it, and I was like, either I eat at this Viking festival or I buy these runes. So that's my choice. Either I have enough money for food and alcohol, or I buy these magical objects by the guy who made them at this exact moment. And I thought about it, and it wasn't much of a thought, so I bought the runes, and I've given them away since. But they got me going,
Is that what
and
started you on the path of runes and that?
yeah, and from that day I bought a book at Barnes and Noble. And I got a book given to me from by my fiance, a rune book, like a week after that from another bookstore, and I just started and scouring the internet and history and libraries and everywhere I could on anything I could find. And then I started giving readings. I wanted to give 100 readings for free before I started getting paid, and at that time I picked up the tarot deck and I started doing that. And then when I really started studying the tarot, I realized that the Five of Swords is and the Five of Spades is the same vibration I felt when I was a kid.
Mhm.
And that the things I did all along, I was learning the pip cards, I was learning the minor arcana when I was a child. And when I became an adult, the major arcana speaks to me so strongly now. Like every time I see I don't know about where you live, but here in California, a lot of people wear the major and minor arcana on t-shirts, and it's fashion now, and nobody questions it. They just walk around
It's
wearing
not
death on
huge,
their
but I think
shirt.
yeah, it's slowly sliding into it. But I mean, a lot of the time people don't get the meaning of the death card. People think it's edgy and dark, and it's like, no, actually, it's quite a nice card. Ironically,
It's,
it's
it's
actually,
the perfect transition between what you thought was right and what will be right going forward.
Mhm.
But it's like you can't walk up to a stranger and be like, "Oh, hey, I see you have the tarot devil. Do you know that it doesn't actually symbolize the devil at all?"
Yeah, they do. But people get freaked out by it, and they think it's cool and edgy and stuff, and they don't realize the symbolism behind it.
Yeah, but it's also a blessing for us who do, because when you do know it and you're
Yeah,
just walking along the street and somebody just shows up wearing the high priestess on their shirt to you and me, we know, wow, we need to ground ourselves. We're being a little too non-dualized, and we need to center between the light and the dark a little more, right? But to anyone else, they're like, "Oh, that's a rad metal shirt from some punk
Mhm.
band or whatever." Nobody thinks about same with the runes. And you I was telling Violet Ann that we see them everywhere. It's impossible to not see the runes. And when I started studying them, I would go outside, and every tree I would see the full set of the runes. Every time I would go walking on the sidewalk and on graffiti on a park bench, at the bottom of my restaurant at McDonald's, on a clipboard at the doctor's, I see the runes engraved in
It's a
all
bit
these
like
places.
when people go about like talking about like seeing 1111 in places or certain numbers, not numerological numbers.
And
It's
eleven
like
eleven is
thinking,
4 runes in a row.
yeah,
So the
thinking about
number
like
one. the number run and the rune of ice, Isa, is both a geometric straight line. So the symbol for the number 1 and the symbol for the rune of ice is the same. So 111 is also ice, 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 ice. So and there, and you can keep going, but I want to just say, like, even the things we think are numbers, some of the numbers are also runes.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, like how people look and they see it as a sign sort of thing. So, like, if people start learning runes a little bit more, they can pick up on the signs that are about them, sort of thing, would you say?
Oh yeah, and they're constant and endlessly amounts of them, and profound when you do, because like they you don't they don't know that what they're doing is this deep, magical symbol, or they do. It's a variance. Is like, most recently I saw on the internet a professional wrestler on one of the TV shows. She came out with the rune of the wagon. It looks like a letter R under her cheek, like a teardrop.
Yeah.
And in the Viking, this is to invoke victory. This was commonly done by the Valkyrie and other female warriors in a challenging situation where they're outnumbered, to bring in the chariots, to bring in more energy than is visible. In Lord of the Rings, this is represented by the ghost army, that invisible force that helps propel you in victory.
So it's like she's purposely trying to invoke victory before she went in the ring.
Yeah, and that was very recently on the rune communities I'm involved in. They want, because whether or not she mentions it, she didn't, or it's ever a big thing. The fact that it's on international television, whether or not you saw it, it was there.
It's something very, very like they've got to have done that on purpose, kind of thing. It's a very evoking kind of symbol there.
Oh yeah, and they all are. But if you don't know them, you don't see them. It's like a glamour. Is if you anyone who reads the runes see them everywhere. Those who cannot read them have never heard them or have no knowledge of them almost whatsoever. And if they do come across them, they're like repelled away from them sometimes. But like, I think there's been times where, especially these type of runes, the runes, that same Viking festival, I saw many people with these in their hair and in their beards, and sometimes like on jewelry in different places. And we wouldn't think about it. You just think, oh, that's a shiny piece of metal. But if you look real close, there's an ancient magical symbol that no one knows the true origin of, right there behind the glimmer of the gold or silver. And at that same Ren Fair, I got a reading from a psychic, and she told me that I should become a reader. She saw it in the cards, and she had this really, it was like, I think it was called the Tudor Rose Tarot, or the Rose of Tudor Tarot, and it was very like medieval age of Tudor art style, very flaky and thin lines, and gorgeous deck, and looked like it came right from the Renaissance. It was so amazing. And she did this style of tarot reading where she would just put all 78 cards in the deck down on the table, and while she's doing it, she's telling you everything about you, and whatever question you had, and giving you boom boom boom, and then by the end she's telling you stuff that's completely unrelated to the question. And you pay for the reading, and you buy a crystal up front. I think it was like $40 for the crystal and the reading, and I thought it was worth it. And the main thing, the takeaway was, she was asking me what I thought the cards were meaning, and she said, I normally don't do this, but something tells me that you know what these cards mean. And I'm like, I don't though. But she was insisting on it, and
You'd already been kind of learning by yourself for years, but you didn't know that you were learning.
Yeah, and I owned a deck, and I looked through it multiple times, but they were just pictures. I never read the guidebook that way. I was just never open to it, but apparently I was always doing it. So, and at the end she says, here's my number and I can give you a few tarot lessons. So I ended up getting 3 lessons from her. And she says do 100 free readings before you start charging, which is what I was doing already with the runes. I was like 30 rune readings in at that point. And I it's been kept going. I started on YouTube, and
So
I was
what actually made you decide to actually start the YouTube channels? Because it's one thing to like decide
yeah.
to do readings. What made you decide on YouTube and decide
So
to go
first
that
was I
direction?
ran out of people for free readings to learn. I ran out of people. I just couldn't get enough people, and the only way for me to get where I wanted to be was to give free readings. So a friend of mine, Gavin Lim, on Weird Channelings, I've collaborated with him a few times. He told me to just do what I feel comfortable with, which was just talking and channeling videos at first, and then I established that and zodiac videos right off the bat of doing zodiac and runes, like probably my 5th or so video. And it it was for the new year, and they kind of just started rolling right off the bat. And I developed into live streams, and then I stopped. I changed my live streams. I'm not doing them anymore, and I'm moving to personal clients and less free sessions on the internet. And it's all of my development. As it was so hard for me to just get reps in. Like any skill, anything you're building, you just need to do it. 1,000 hours of anything is how you get to mastery, is what they say.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get those 1,000 hours. And but once you get them in, the grind is over, it's huge. And I realized that people kept giving me decks and runes, and I kept getting things again and again as just gifts, and I'm so grateful for that. And that helps me. And but the big growth of getting on tarot or on YouTube was so hard for me, and I realized why it was hard when I stopped doing tarot and I moved over to the runes. Was tarot is way more popular than the runes are, and probably ever will be, because the tarot is a very personal, emotional symbol, where the runes are kind of cold, analytical symbol, and it doesn't stimulate the same part of the brain. And so
People like the pretty pictures as well, like
yeah,
pretty pictures.
and so I leaned into the pretty picture and moved into it more so than the runes. But if you look at my early videos, anyone who can see that I did begin with runes and tarot, and then I put the runes aside because, one, I was being told that people didn't like them, and I was wanting to please other people instead of my own integrity. As I realized over the time that for me, the tarot is meant for a personal tool. I use the tarot for my own, but the runes are for everybody. The runes are universal.
Just
And
because everyone's doing it though doesn't mean that you should stop doing something you love. Because I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
and
there might be more
that's what
people
I
doing it,
thought.
but there'll be more people to compete with, if you know what I mean. You won't stand out as much if you're doing what everybody else is doing. It's trying to follow your own path, sort of thing, follow your own vibration.
Yeah, and it's not something it's easy to do from the beginning. It's like I had to learn that. I had to learn to follow my own instead of just following the herd. And I love the runes so much more than I love tarot. And it's and I know I've seen people who are in love with the tarot, and it's great to see that. But I know I'm not. I know that when I see these runes anywhere, my eyes light up. It's like seeing it's like your childhood crush smiling at you. It makes my heart sing when I talk or share the runes. That's not the case with the tarot, and it never was. And but I've been told I am very good at the tarot, from one, because since childhood I've divination is exciting to me.
I mean,
And
like the tarot wasn't always popular on YouTube, like or in general. I mean,
No.
so maybe you're part of a wave that has to bring, runes to the
Well,
forefront,
yeah,
to
and
entice
I've seen that
people
too.
to find it
In
interesting.
in the last since like from now, uh 2 years after I made my first video with runes and tarot, the amount of tarot readers have 5 times doubled, but the amount of rune readers have like twice double. So there's there is growth in it, and that's the only way it can grow is by just people doing it and more people teaching it. And there's one thing I want to talk about here on your platform is there's a lot of people who use the runes for symbols of hate and oppression and violence and black magic, and still continue to use these symbols for cultural and appropriative reasons and negative things. And I see it like a torch. The torch can be used to burn a bridge down, can also be used to light the way in a cave. A knife can be used to open a letter, can also be used to stab someone. So
It depends on your intention behind it.
yeah, and it's a symbol. If someone says I hate you and someone says I love you, they're using the same symbol base with two different intentions.
Yeah,
And
I suppose, unfortunately, it's been perverted by people over the years and stuff as well, and it's trying to reclaim it to its true origins of, of trying to help people, because that's kind of the true origins to all of the divination tools, is to help people progress, to help people, spread
and
love
to
and
help all
positivity.
people,
Yeah,
to not just help your tribe, to not just help the people with the same skin color as you, to be able to help all people. And that's the big issue with the runes, is for a long time they have not helped all people. They've only helped the Germanic tribes, and it's been exclusively a Germanic thing, and um and a Nordic thing and a Scandinavian thing, where the truth is these are universal symbols. They're cosmic symbols, and no one race truly lays claim to them because they're mythopoetic. By mythopoetic meaning there's no historical documentation of the origin of the runes. We have them only from mythology and poems.
yeah.
That's how we know of their origin. And because of that, there is no true answer. The word rune has no real meaning. What what you think the runes have to be used for, 30 million other people probably disagree with you and still use them in their own way. And that's why I love giving rune videos. I love what I've been doing with you and other people doing the Celtic Otherworld readings recently on YouTube,
Yeah.
because I'm able to bridge the modern technology of the cards with the ancient technology of the runes, with the timeless technology of storytelling. Because no matter who you are, where you are, you like to hear a story. It's part
That's the
of being
thing. You
human.
have to make it your own. Really, you can't just follow what you think is going to be popular, because it won't be true to you. It won't be true to your reading style. And I think that's the important thing to remember, that you shouldn't just follow it. You shouldn't just follow the herd. You have to find your own path.
Yeah, and that's in the runes. The first rune is abundance of everything, and the second rune is the oxen, the making the actually the aurochs, which is an extinct large cattle that roamed throughout Europe and created many forests and behind it in its large steppes.
I was going to ask
And
you about like other divination tools you use, because like as well, because I know you love using the pins and stuff to do pin readings, and a few other stuff. We already talked about using the
yeah,
Magic the Gathering cards and that.
so uh before to preface that, let me explain my type of divination. It is not normal compared to other people. I am a pictographic channeler, meaning whenever I see an image, it triggers a response emotionally within me that then I am able to communicate to you, whoever is receiving it. And unlike other forms of divination that is more of a science, and some that are more like an art, all of mine is both. Scientific art is that middle ground of caring about the origins, but also being able to shape it into something new going forward. So my main form of divination, other than cards and runes, has always been dice divination. These are some Mickey Mouse dice, and ever since childhood, uh, I would not go anywhere without a deck of playing cards and 2 dice in my pocket. Like my whole life. You would think I'm a gambler since young age, but
there's a lot of readers that like playing cards decks. A lot of readers I've heard of started with playing card decks, partly because it was just something that was had, and ones that actually did originate, people that originated from families where it was frowned upon. People in the family that like doing tarot and stuff would revert to the playing cards decks because it was something they could have without being judged. Because if you're fiddling with a playing card deck, nobody really knows what the hell you're doing. If you're just playing with it, or you're just playing solitaire, or if you're actually doing yourself a reading, they don't know. So it was so common for people to use that.
Yeah, and as both we know, those are the minor arcana. All of the cards in the playing card deck are also in the tarot. And you are learning the tarot while you're learning the playing cards. And most people say the minor arcana is a lot harder to learn than the major arcana for people who just start with tarot. So you're actually learning the most difficult part, some people say, first. And if you're like me, you do a lot of your learning without knowing what you're doing, and you just end up accidentally studying things for years and years, and
I think
then
it's
it
good
comes
though to be
relevant.
fluid with it and to experiment and to see what actually flows, because it's a divination tool. It's not you have to do it one way or the other.
Yeah, and so with the dice, there's many systems of dice, but the ancient Chinese used dice divination. Dice divination probably was used even before that in some form. And so the idea of that is using the numbers and the probability and the placement of the numbers on a piece of paper, or on a cloth, or even on the ground, and just interpreting 50% what it means scientific. Okay, this number always means this, plus the other 50% of my intuition. My intuition is to say this. Yeah, it means this, but I'm going to say it this way. That might change the meaning a little bit, but you will still get the intent of what I'm wanting to say. And then for me, I think every reader has this, the shock of accuracy. Like when you start doing something and then people cry how accurate you are, and they can't stop. They're like ranting and raving how amazingly accurate you are, and
I
you're
think
like,
that's the one
I
way.
don't know.
I know, I don't know if about you, but like one of the things that I fell down at first with was something would come into your head and it would make no sense to you, and then you'd hold back from it and not say it because you're like, oh, that makes no sense, I won't say anything.
Yeah, like a judgment of the information.
Yeah, and but as you get more acute to it and more used to it, you kind of start to know, okay, this won't make any sense to me, but I need to say it as I see it, or say it how I feel it, because although it doesn't make sense to me, it's not meant to make sense to you, it's meant to make sense to the person you're doing the reading for. So
Yeah,
it might be you talk
the,
about a
the
cat in a
first
hat
three or
or
four
something,
times that yeah, the
and it
first
means
3 or 4 times is a shock. When that happens, the first like 5 times are shocking, rather, but I agree with you. Once you kind of get over that, it's still always noticeable, but you're like, and it happens to me all the time where, so example, I gave someone a free reading, and at the very beginning, right when I saw them, I knew instantly that they were a musician, and that they had some connection to dragons.
Mhm.
And so first thing I asked them, and it was weird and uncomfortable, and strange, and so I asked, um uh do you play music? And they're, yeah, I'm a musician, I have a band and all this. And we just met. I There's a totally new person, and then somehow something told me. I was like, I normally don't ask this question before the readings, but are you connected to any mythical creatures in particular? Because I felt,
Yeah.
that she was going to say dragon,
But
And
if
then
you
she
if you
says,
had that feeling, you just said
well,
instantly dragon, you know.
and so what she said was, "Oh no, I don't feel connected to any mythical creatures at all," and and so it was like, okay. And then I kept doing the reading, and then the very last card of the reading was the Dragon Stone card in this the only card in the whole deck to feature dragons. And when that card came up, she was like, "Oh, that's what you said earlier,"
Yeah.
and it was important, even though I felt like I said something wrong. No, I just predicted the end of the reading in a way that I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But if I didn't do it that way, it to her that was confirmation of me being accurate. Like, wow, he said this thing even before he ever could have known this thing. And but it was something that I wanted to censor. I didn't want to say that because I was like, well, it could be wrong.
Yeah.
But
But if you just you get
because I'm
nervous though,
stupid
because
enough
you
to
feel
say
like,
it.
oh well, this doesn't make any sense to me, and you don't want to say something that's weird or something like that. You get worried about saying something odd or weird or something, and it's getting to that point of just going, just say it, because it might not
The
make
whole
sense to
thing is
you, or
weird.
it might not make
Yeah.
sense right now, but it will later, kind of thing. And it's just kind of letting go of that kind of worry and like self, almost like self-censorship sort of thing, of censoring yourself and holding yourself back from it, is kind of hard to get over, I think.
Yeah, it takes time. That's why I do recommend doing 100 free readings before you start charging, so you can overcome that and other things that it just takes 100 readings to really learn. Because it's if there's certain automatic things we do that like self-sabotage in some way or another, and it just takes practice to identify them to stop doing it. And um and also it is I I like it better focusing more on private sessions instead of doing public readings, but I could only have learned that by doing it. And I'm so grateful for every person, including you, who came to my live streams and got a reading when I was doing them for free, anyone who donated, all of those people, because they got me to learn and to question and to develop to a point where I can give really powerful readings privately.
Yeah.
And I don't I don't take any of that for granted. And anyone who's upset for me for changing what I do, they're entitled to be upset. And I just want to acknowledge that I'm doing it for my own mental and emotional state that I think I can help more people privately than I actually can publicly at this time. And I still will be a public figure. I just want to learn and grow and develop in that. And anyone who's seen me from the beginning can see that I've grown a lot over YouTube. The type of videos and the way I made my videos are a lot different.
Yeah.
And that's something I saw in this series as well as Violet Ann is I noticed in like every YouTuber in their first 2-3 videos they talk kind of nervous and they don't like
Yeah.
looking at the camera and the they stutter a lot more. And then a year or so, 2 years in, everyone shows up and they're confident. Hello everybody, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, and the troll
It
comes in and
takes
they
so
can deal with
long.
it. They get attacked, boom, they deal with it. And
It takes a while to get used to it. I mean, my very
for
first
some people it
videos, I'm
takes
like that
a
as
long
well.
time. Some people, but it's so good to watch. That's why YouTube is so great, because you can go back and watch my very first video from 2 years ago and be like, wow, that guy is nervous, he's afraid to be on camera, and he is really uncomfortable being here. But then you watch my most recent videos as a reader, you're like, okay, this guy's a confident and competent psychic who understands what he's doing and is in his own skin.
I mean,
And
like, if you go back and look at some of like the biggest channels there is out there, go to order by oldest. Some
yeah,
people delete their older videos because they're like, oh, I know it was terrible. But the ones
cringe.
that have left it up, you can really see the difference. Everybody's just in their room. Everybody's just in like a spare room with a door behind them, or a wardrobe behind them or something. Nobody has like the best equipment. Everybody's a bit nervous. So, but the only way you get better at it is like, doing more and more and more
Repetition. Yeah.
and going better and better. People expect to be like a Picasso straight away. You have to put those layers and layers of paint on, layers and layers of skill on before you get to that level. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's trying to forge your own experience, it's forge your own personality on it. So
And that's the coolest thing that I learned is to just be me, because if and like tarot was really booming during the pandemic, and I got to a point during that I was like, it's in my studies, all the things I'm learning is that tarot is much better for me personally, privately, in a dark room with candles giving me information about myself than it ever will be publicly. And so I was using oracle cards, and oracle cards are so powerful because whatever they mean, they don't actually mean that, because they mean everything.
so
There's
I know a lot of the readers, they struggle to do their reading to themselves. Do you struggle at all with it, or do you find it quite easy?
I struggle with readings for others.
Ah,
I could give readings for myself for hours and hours and be incredibly accurate on stuff I don't want to know about. Like for me, I can only give my readings are too accurate. Like my readings tell me stuff I don't want to know.
I know of
And
one breeder that said that they have a bit of a problem, that whenever they try and do readings for like collective readings or star signs readings, they usually end up like warping back to themselves again, and
well,
it
that's not really for
sidelining
me.
back.
I have friends who are like that too, but for me, it's more so where I just have an antisocial thing, and just being public and all that, and so just the idea of my words could have a positive or negative effect on someone is somewhat terrifying, and that's the thing that is difficult for me to overcome, but it's getting less and less difficult.
Yeah.
Where just if I have to give myself a reading on any question I have, I carry my runes everywhere I go, and I am not afraid to literally stop in the middle of the sidewalk, sit down, crisscross applesauce, and give myself a rune reading in a busy place, and find a bench or a table at a restaurant and just start giving myself readings. I have no issue, or I've done that. Also, I always carry dice, and sometimes it's just as simple as throwing some dice on the ground, picking them up, looking at them, and getting my answer. And um, and I like more subtle forms of divination, like trees and smoke and ice, and these more forgotten shamanic types of divination that are not used as much. And
Do you watch for crows at all? Because that's one big thing in the UK is the crows.
um, I do different type of avian divination, with whatever birds are around, how the birds fly, where the birds poop, what's a tree branch they're in, all different things like that. Um, and that's fascinating. And as a kid, you think you're just watching birds,
Yeah.
and it's like I never understand that I've been training my whole life for what I'm doing now and in the future. I just didn't call it that, and I didn't realize what it was. I was just doing the thing I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But now that I'm getting paid to do the thing I want to do, I was preparing for it the whole time.
So was there any paranormal kind of experiences you had growing up? Because a lot of people sometimes talk about strange paranormally kind of stuff that they've had going on.
I So it was so paranormal at the beginning, and it's always been. I think it's been deliberately not paranormal since then. So when I was a kid, it's on video. I would tell anyone who would listen. Once I started to talk at 4 years old, which is pretty late for a kid, I was speaking in gibberish, but it wasn't really gibberish because it was repeating sounds in sentence structure, but no one understood what I was saying. And then once I actually started speaking English, I'm not very good at it still, as you can tell, but once I started speaking English, I would tell anyone who would listen, my alien mommy chose my Earth mommy to raise me on this planet to make the humans more like the aliens. And I would tell anyone who would listen to me about that. And I had imaginary friends that would move objects sometimes and different things like that. And a few times, when my imaginary friends might would break something that there was no way I could possibly break, but I have to get punished for breaking it. um, if you call that paranormal. Um, there was just, weird shadows, different things at night. And then after my father passed away, I think any kid who loses their parent before the age of 10, something within you wants to be a medium to contact your deceased parent, and you just naturally, intuitively just become a medium of some level, just
I
for
think
the
definitely like
desire.
younger children have easier time of being able to connect with spirit, because they have less of the, oh, we should shut it down or we should be scared of it kind of
Yeah, the
thing.
mental blockages.
Yeah, they have less of the mental blockages, and I think the younger the kid is, the less likely, that they're going to have that mental blockage. And I think that it's more like society puts it in at a later date. Some people it never gets put in, but
Yeah.
usually society at a later date puts in this mental blockage to do with it. um, and
And
probably
but
like,
I'm so grateful for that, because I I never spoke to my father growing up. I never wanted to, but I wanted to speak to other dead people, and Dr. Seuss and other famous dead people that at a young age I felt drawn to. And then as I developed, I have a sister who's into some type of spirit activity, and I had no acknowledgement of the grounded world around me. And then my other sister, she gave me a tarot reading when I was like 17. And she was just like, yeah, you're going to go to college, you're going to get your degree, but you won't be fulfilled in your job. And I had no clue what it meant, but it was totally right down the line. And, um, but it's just, I think there's how my tarot journey happened is many small things along the side culminated into understanding that there's I am Professor Marvel. He used a crystal ball. I prefer runes. I could use cards. He could probably use cards. And there's that. It's not a character for me though. I don't pretend or perform as a psychic. It's just every minute of every day I see things that others can't see. I can explain things that others can't explain, and I just have a natural knack for saying things people have already known in ways they've never heard it before. And and to me, that's what psychics generally should be doing, is saying, no one can really tell you brand new information to be accurate, but they can tell you things you've known before, but in ways you've never ever heard it before. And a good example in a lot of readings is, I have to tell people that no one can love you unless you love yourself, but they've heard that before and they don't believe that. So what I have to say is, you have felt like you've been loved before. When you feel that feeling and give it to yourself, more people will begin to love you that same way. That is an easier way to tell someone something than the way that it has been told time and time again. And the first time I received that from someone, and I realized that that's my calling in life, and that's where my happiness and excitement lies.
yeah. So is there any tips or tools or anything like that you wish you kind of knew when you were first getting into divination, or anything you'd like to share to people that are thinking about getting into it at all? Or
Yeah, well, I'll go in reverse. So the thing for anyone who's thinking about getting into divination, just do it. Just find something and do it. Get dice, get a deck of playing cards, go to the dollar store and grab some index cards, and make make something. And the internet is huge. There's so much to learn, and the information is out there. And just don't be dogmatic. That's the one thing I wish someone would have told me, is to stop thinking that this is right and that is wrong. There's one way to do things. Either you win or you lose. Either it's good or it's bad. This dualized, like really polarized perspective. I wish someone would sit me down and tell me, no, good and evil is the same thing. Right and wrong are just two different vibrations of the same aspect. And the baseball bat can be used for the home run, or the baseball bat can break someone's knees. And that has nothing to do with a baseball bat. That's just the vibration of the swing. And I wish I learned more of being open to learn, because when I started, I really thought it was something mystical and silly and a kind of ancient, in a way that it is ancient. Tarot and divination is, but the way we do it is not. The way we do it and the way people want it done is very modern, but it is ancient. It's paradoxes. That's it. That's my one thing is, if you're going to get into divination, you got to learn to deal with paradoxes, because there's a lot of contradictions. There's a lot of, if this is true, then that can't be true, but they're both still true.
Yeah,
And
there's also like the whole idea of that, just because something plays out in that this is gonna happen in the future, does not always mean it is going to. We have control over it. We have
free
free
will
will,
is in play. Yeah.
and it sometimes people think, oh well, this has happened, so this can't happen. It's like, no, sometimes, like, if you get a heads up that something you don't want to happen is going to happen, it's a wake-up call to say, okay, you need to change things up, or need to change what you're doing, kind of thing, to prevent it from happening.
Yeah, and there's no snooze button.
Yeah. I
And
think sometimes when you give people like difficult readings of going, look, if you carry on this path, that you're going to fuck up your life, it's a bit of a wake up call so they don't end up doing that.
or is they end up doing that because you tell them not to. And it's knowing the individual and trusting your intuition to understand that that's one other thing too, is I wish I understood that every reading is its own reading, an island separate from every other reading. So I used to compare and contrast every reading with each other one I would give for private sessions. And I would be like, okay, this one went this way, so that was good. This one didn't go this way, so that was bad. But the person receiving the readings are not thinking that. It was only all in my head. And I wish I was able to see each one as its own experience instead of trying to combine them all into one thing. So that's one big advice, is just take each one as its own thing. Yes, the other ones happened. Some of that things, the experiences you learn are relevant, but some of them aren't. And be open to just being in it. Don't focus too much on the past. Don't focus too much on the future. And just sit down in the now and just make the best now you can in the readings. And the most people come to psychics about the future or about the past, but the most important thing will always be what's happening in the present. If you can talk to them about what they can do today to help their tomorrow, is more important than to tell them you're going to get married tomorrow. Well, what can they do about that today?
I mean, sometimes as well, I think it can help people to listen to what's happening, because if you're telling somebody something's going to happen like weeks or months down, or even years down the line, it can be hard for them to relate to it. But if you mention as well a little bit of what you're feeling right now, what's going on right now, that sometimes can kind of make them kind of perk up a bit and go, oh, maybe I need to pay attention to this.
Yeah, and those are my main tips. I wish I kind of understood more of the laws of understanding. I didn't understand what I didn't understand. Everyone probably heard this, is you don't know what you don't know. There's no way to know what you don't know. And that's something, but I wouldn't have changed anything though.
No, you can't control what comes out. What comes out is what wants to come out.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, sometimes you do get where it's like, that's all I've got for you, and it's hard because like people want more, but it's like sometimes that's all it has to tell.
Yeah. And sometimes is they're done and I want to tell more. You can just tell that they're done with the reading emotionally, but there's more you got to say. That happens a lot to me rather than so.
So
And
is there anything else you'd like to share, or?
well, yeah, just yeah, the internet's scary. There's mean people. There's a huge amount of people that you don't know anything about that have a potential of finding your content. Don't let that psych you out too much. Just understand that life is temporary, but anything you create will outlive you. Anything that you've published in any form has a potential to exist for thousands or millions of years after you die.
Like the waves we make in the pond spread out beyond
Yeah.
our reach.
And so, Madame Blavatsky and all of these other people from the 1800s who were talking about spiritualism and mysticism, they have no clue that, that when Gardner was talking about Wicca, he had no idea that it would become a global thing that would affect millions of people. And it was the ripple of his works, the things he written and published, that affects people still to this day. And same
It
is true with
reignited
every
the
YouTube video.
witchcraft kind of vibe.
Yeah, even true of every YouTube video. Gardner didn't get many sales in his books. You may not get many views on your videos, but down the line, those who will need it will find it. It might take 1,000 or 100 years, but that's not for you to concern. You're just there to make it, and that's it. What happens to it, it's just what happens. Don't focus too much on the numbers. That's my one advice. That kicked my ass for a long time.
Oh yeah, you can get very easily round up in that and going, oh no, well I haven't got many views on this video. Loads of people are giving it dislike. Why are they suddenly giving it dislike and stuff? Like some of my favorite videos I made, like nobody's fucking ever watched it. Like about 4 or 5 people. But
and like people who are celebrities to me have less views and subs than me, and I don't want to acknowledge that. That's the thing, is you're always more successful than someone else and you're always less successful than someone else every time, and acknowledge both of those. We only want to acknowledge that we're less successful than that other person. Well, they're not doing exactly what you're doing, so you shouldn't even compare.
it's very easy to criticize, not very
And then if
easy
you're
to celebrate.
comparing people, you're doing better than these other people who are doing very similar things to you, but you're better than them. Everyone is. No matter who you are, there's someone who's doing worse than you and someone doing better than you. And you just got to acknowledge both are true, not just one is true. And it's not worse, it's growth. It's a race, right? It's not every person is in the marathon. It's not about who finishes first, it's the fact that everyone finishes.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And if you'd like to see more of his rune readings or the other readings that he does, I'll put the link to his channel down in the description. But thank you for sharing today with how you got into runes and how you got into divination in general. And
thank you for having me.
Please take care, everyone. And like I said, the link will be down below. And thank you all for joining us today.